Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have back with us Joshua Sherrard, who's the President and CEO of Strategic Navigators, and we'll be talking about fringe benefits of properly structured corporations for entrepreneurs. Josh, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you today because this is a really good one in our series that we've been covering so far. And I love the title here of Properly Structured Corporations for Entrepreneurs because, as you know, you start a business and many people start off as sole prop. Okay, let's just kind of get our sea legs and see how things are going. And then what do we do from there? So let's jump right in and talk about some of the corporate structures that are available, and then what should people keep in mind to properly structure them?
Yeah, Mike, there's so many different options out there, and oftentimes when you think fringe benefits as an entrepreneur, you're thinking, oh, that's what I give to my employees.
Yeah.
Well, what we don't realize is that there's a lot of power in fringe benefits. Now, under a normal S corporation structure, if you're the owner, you don't get the fringe benefits. I mean, frankly, you're the guy that, you're getting paid the big bucks, and so you get the fringe benefits for everybody else, but not for yourself. But if you and I worked for a big corporation, say GM or Microsoft or something like that, we would really be interested in our fringe benefit program. And so what we do in my world of tax planning is we create a corporation that can actually give those very valuable fringe benefits to its employees. And guess what? We make the employee of that company the entrepreneur. And so it's somewhat of a sophisticated structure. But what we do is we use a C corporation and we make the CEO, the chairman of the board, you name it, is the employer, the entrepreneur, and their family. And now they qualify for all those fringe benefits that are outlined. They're called cafeteria plans, is probably a term many people are familiar with. We actually reference Publication 15B in the IRS Code, which basically outlines what you can do. They have these little boxes, and kind of humorous, they're little boxes that says tip. And this is the IRS telling you, hey, this is what you do for fringe benefits in a properly structured corporation.
So I want to talk about some of the bullet points and actual items, but it makes me also think about, if I'm hearing you correctly, here is an employee that typically, quote unquote, punches the clock. But yet now this business owner is saying, I want to set up a structure so that I'm going to create this, corporation and name this employee as one of the owners there so that they're actually being an intrapreneur under the umbrella of my company.
Exactly. And you typically do this with just your close family. Sometimes there's partners and we put the partners into this corporation, but now you've isolated. So you're getting a W-2 now from a new company, it's structured that's, you're an employee, but your employment contract is so different. That company exists to do business development, marketing, research. We create those purposes that are already being done and carve them out. As a business owner, if somebody asks me, hey, Josh, what do you get paid for business development? And the answer is, I don't get paid anything. I get paid when I deliver my service. And so all the energy and effort that I put into developing the business, marketing, all the energy I put into advertising, all of that, nobody's paying me for that. I don't get an hourly wage for that. But now, under this new C corporation, I can get a wage through the system that's justified for all that work that I'm doing in those areas.
Yeah, and I will say that there's going to be some tangible and intangible benefits of this. And again, I am the outsider listening in to your, expertise here, but I'm watching for tangible things like, oh, you can get, you will receive. But the intangible is the feeling of self-worth that you get as a employee being given this honor of having some of this autonomy, some of this creativity, right? Won't that help retain employees? Won't that help recruit new employees when a key employee sees this and they go, wow, if I come on board here, this is something I've never seen before. This is a great environment.
Yeah, you absolutely do. You're creating a whole new mindset. Oftentimes we muddy the thought process of working on the business with working in the business. And what we're doing in this, structurally, we're justifying Here's a corporation that's whole purpose is to work on the business. It's to develop it and to make it grow. And then you've got your core business, which is what most entrepreneurs, have built up. And that's where you're providing or you're working in the business. So it's kind of that in and on. There are books been written about this that are pretty popular out there. And at the end of the day, we are now putting some life behind the let's work on the business. It's funny that McDonald's actually has the corner on this market. They say for every dollar that they spend on business development, marketing, advertising, that kind of thing, they're making anywhere from $7 to $8 in profit. And so one of the things that I like to say to my clients, my entrepreneurs that I'm working with is, hey, how much money are you spending to grow the business? And you got to include the time that you're putting into it too, right? Because that's real hard man hours. And so, for every dollar that you're putting in, how much are you making? And so the average guy is going to make anywhere from 3 to 4 of profit on those dollars. But this is a real tangible way of saying, hey, how can I grow my business and how does this carve out help me?
So let's talk a little bit more of these fringe benefits. You've talked about like cafeteria funds, things like that. If you set up something like this as the entrepreneur, business owner, CEO, what are some of the other things that you would be offering to your team that they would find extremely valuable?
Yeah, one of the first things I'm going to say is it's great to be able to use this program under what we call the Hire Your Kids. And so, again, utilizing this program, you can actually move quite a bit of money per child through the C Corporation or through this new entity that we create, and you're going to be able to get that money tax-free for the kids. And so it's about $12,000 per child. So somebody that's got 4 kids, that's almost $50,000 they can move, essentially through these structures to their family, to that child, and for their benefit, that's going to be tax-free. And so that's the first one. Another one that's really big is a medical reimbursement program. Now, everybody knows what an HSA is, but that's kind of you dump a bunch of money into a fund and you have to use that for medical purposes. Well, under the medical reimbursement plan of this corporation that we're talking about, a fringe benefit, basically you put money into this. You don't have to put money into it beforehand. You spend as you go, and then you get reimbursed. And so, I'll use the example in my family. My youngest son has Down syndrome, and so it's a blessing and it's also an opportunity there. And so we end up having to spend a lot of money on, just all the medical stuff.
Yeah.
And every dime that we spend, I'm able to write off through this medical reimbursement plan. We've put in, these zero entry pools for kids with disabilities in homes. We've put in elevators in homes. I mean, all these things now it's a write-off to our entrepreneur because of this sophisticated system. There's just a bunch of others: child care, long-term disability, long-term care. There's an overtime de minimis plan. Just a lot of different things that can be packed in as this cafeteria of fringe benefits that can really benefit the entrepreneur and their family and get them some tax-free, tax-favored dollars.
So let's go a little bit deeper on one of those that catches my attention, which is hiring your kids. Talk a little bit about that without getting into weeds or detail or confusing, but let's just say that it's like, okay, well, what age do your kids have to be? Because what if the IRS comes knocking on your door and goes, hold on, your kids are 4, 5, 6, or, well, your kids are 19, 20, 21, but what did they actually do? You need to verify that they worked and earned this. You can't say they, mowed the or they, filed papers and then you paid them $100,000. So what are some of those conditions?
Yeah, and that's a great question. We don't like to do any child that's, really under 3, but we can thank Hollywood, because Hollywood has really broken open the laws relative to what you can pay a child for modeling, for advertising, for some of those functions that, maybe doesn't require a lot of their time. As the kids get a little bit older, especially the teenagers, they can help you with social media. They can help you with filing. You can have a kid taking out the garbage in the office. We have a whole guidebook on how to hire your kids. But the thing I love about this plan is that money goes into an account that the child is on, and you can start to teach your child stewardship. You can start to teach your child, hey, groceries aren't free. Mortgage isn't free. I mean, these things cost money. You can show them how to budget. You can teach them how powerful a dollar is. And ultimately, you can even start saving for them in this tax-free manner. And it's very powerful for them in the long term.
Yes. And I love when we talk about one thing that has multiple benefits like, we can set up this structure and it's beneficial to the entrepreneur, but it also has expanding, amplifying benefits to your employees who feel well taken care of, who take ownership in the company because they're entrepreneurial and they can get creative. And then the same with your kids. It's like, okay, we can set this up and that benefits the business owner, but also it's a teaching opportunity for you to be able to guide and direct your kids, because what they learn at that age was going to pay off 100-fold when they're in their teens and 20s and beyond. So that's a huge, huge opportunity. What about things like mileage or automobiles or things like that? Would that be also included into this structure that you would be able to provide for the employees of the corporation?
We do. And again, it's not just under one company. It's under a kind of a sophisticated setup of multiple companies interacting with each other. But I got to tell you, the automobile question is one I love getting. I love cars. And, when somebody calls me from a dealership and says, hey, Josh, should I lease or should I buy? That's when I know that I'm the trusted tax advisor at that point. Yep. But we come in and we look at that. There's a lot of different things. We set up leasing companies where maybe somebody loves cars and they want to have, several in a collection or whatever it is. We can do that in a leasing company and end up writing off a lot. We do have a vehicle reimbursement program that we walk people through. How do you get reimbursed for using not just the mileage, but hey, a percentage of that payment, a percentage of the gas, a percentage of the oils, all that kind of thing. We can do that. But then I really like to coach people to have their vehicle, or at least one of their vehicles, owned for business purpose by a company, because now 100% of it is a write-off. And, we walk people through how to be compliant with the IRS. This is an area where people like to cheat a lot. Let's go get some exotic car and try to write it off. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about how do you do this appropriately, accurately, get the right types of write-offs, get the right types of benefits, and still be able to enjoy that aspect just with the automobile and what you're driving.
And of course, this is something that is all completely above board in the tax code that we've been talking about. That's the size of a old Yellow Pages book, 70,000 pages or words. It's just unbelievable. There's no earthly way that someone could navigate this and figure out how to do it on their own. So that's where someone like yourself comes in to be the guide and listen to what they're looking for, assess their situation and say, okay, so if we set it up this way and structure it this, and then this one ties to this, it's all kind of connecting the dots the right way.
Yeah, it really is. And it's, again, compliance is such a high value because you don't want to be doing something that's shady in the gray area. You want to make sure that you're doing it and that it's justified, not only by what you're reading in the tax code, but then what our team goes even deeper and we say, what's the case law behind that? What are the real life examples that justify doing this? And then we feel all that much more better about, making this happen for our clients, because we can say, hey, look at this that happened, 20 years ago, and that's the exact thing what you're doing, and it was approved, and yes. So that's the comfort level. That's kind of how we practice what we do.
Yeah, I love that. So let's roll into some of the other things that you do. We've been talking about properly structured corporations for entrepreneurs. What does your work look like as you now look at the opportunity with nonprofits?
Well, I had a lot of years in the nonprofit sector running large multi-million-dollar companies, and I understood a lot of how you have to run a nonprofit in the U.S. to be compliant. And then when I made my journey into the tax space, understanding how does a 501c3 or a nonprofit play a role in that world. And, all of us are familiar with very wealthy families that get something called a foundation. And a foundation is a organization that is really geared for a family to do its charitable work through. However, a lot of the things that are going on in the foundation are still benefiting the family. So the dynamic here is, I looked at the nonprofit world that I was in, and I said, how can we help people be philanthropic? How can we help people give to the causes that they love and not necessarily have to benefit for it personally? And so that was creating the nonprofit. So what we do at Strategic Navigators is we create a nonprofit that is owned by the public. And that's a very key factor. It's not owned by a family, it's owned by the public, but it is run by the family or by the entrepreneur that is my client. And I have one of these, Mike, and I love it. We're able to do so many different things across the world. in Christian ministry. We do education. We do humanitarianism. And I've got clients that do things with sports, or maybe they're doing some things with the trades, or maybe they're doing some things with the environment. But basically, we set up this nonprofit that they're running. They can put money into it. They get the dollar-for-dollar write-off as a charitable contribution. Other people can participate in it, and it is going to ride alongside their estate in a beautiful way so that they're able to make a difference, make an impact on those causes that are near and dear to them. So we tie this into estate planning. We tie this into legacy, and it really works really nicely.
So I think that's really exciting, and because I think a lot of people think, oh, you work for a nonprofit, that means that you're, eating beans and rice, or, oh, your company is for profit, that means you're taking advantage of people. And those are two far extremes that neither one are the case, but you're kind of blending the two. Makes me think of something called the social enterprise. How is what you just described similar or different to a social enterprise?
It's similar in the fact that it's going to benefit the public. It's different that it's not necessarily a business mechanism internally. This really is a fund. You're really putting money into the nonprofit, getting the tax advantage as soon as you put the money in there, and then it can sit there. The nonprofit can invest that money. It's got to be fiduciary and careful. It can't, go wild in the stock market, but you can go invest in real estate, you can go invest in a number of different things, and then all of the profit, all of the benefit of that organization has to go to the purposes and causes that are outlined. And it's a really a neat thing because you can come alongside a social enterprise and be able to do some things there too. I've even helped some of my clients who want to put an entire business enterprise inside their nonprofit. And that's going to be a little similar to what you're talking about.
Like a B Corp.
Yeah, and then they are able to just kick off all their profit goes toward the causes that they've talked about.
But what you're talking about is a little bit simpler in the sense that you're just adding a component of a nonprofit foundation for the purpose of directing funds toward causes that you like. And then what kind of benefit does that give the business owner other than just you feel good because you're directing money, but there certainly has to be like some tax benefit or things like that, right?
Oh yeah, I mean it's 100% write-off. So if you put $200,000 from your bottom line into the nonprofit, you get that write-off. Now there are certain limitations that you have to pay attention to within the IRS code, and we help with all of that and we guide through that. But we have a sophisticated system that allows them to do significant amounts into the nonprofit on an annual basis.
And I think that that's a great point to make because we've been talking frequently about this is all legal, it's ethical, it's above board, and you can't have any implication of impropriety because you can't just set up some name and name only and dump a bunch of money into it just to get the write-off. There has to be some checks and balances there, and I think that that's something super important to think about. But you have not only do you get the write-off, which is beneficial to you, but then you get to see how the funds make the money makes a difference where it's going. Whereas if you were to donate to, let's say, the Red Cross or, your local church, where the funds go and it's wonderful, but you don't have as much personal involvement in that.
Not only that, but you also, again, in the case of a lot of the entrepreneurs that I work with, if let's say you're giving $50,000 to your local church to redo their parking lot, well, you kind of get a target on your back. You become the guy that they keep asking for stuff, and so at the end of the day, yes, it's nice to be able to give those large gifts, but by having your own nonprofit, you can slow feed those things. You can do things in a different way. However, you're getting the tax benefit up front.
And it is actually different than a foundation. So it's like a foundation acting as a nonprofit, but I kind of think of it like, the Bill Gates Foundation. He's made his trillions and now he just spends his day finding good causes to give his money to. So he's in the foundation mindset. And it really is just something that helps you kind of be all into your charitable focus.
It is. I do want to be clear, though, that a foundation is a term for the IRS, and that is, in fact, taxed at a certain level, whereas the nonprofit is not taxed at all.
And I'm sure you would guide a client to set up one versus the other based on their circumstance and what they need.
100%. And we, the joy of this is you can even, again, tie this into your legacy. Kids, grandkids can get involved, could even become employees of the nonprofit if they're passionate about it. And you can really make a difference and have a stronger leverage in the causes that you love.
So let's talk a little bit about legacy, because I think that when we're thinking about, planning for retirement, there's the years of striving, and then there's the years of thriving, and then there's the years of giving back and seeing that legacy. And maybe an entrepreneur is looking at exiting a business down the road, or, carrying on the business / nonprofit side of things. Well, how does this mindset here of foundation versus nonprofit, those opportunities, how does that help an entrepreneur with transferring their wealth and maybe creating that legacy?
Yeah, the nonprofit can play a significant role when you're at those moments of business sale, or whether you're at those moments of legacy planning, those types of things. I like to call it a living legacy. A lot of times when we think about legacy, it's what do people get after I go 6 feet under? And it's better to spend and to give that money while you're still breathing. And we talk about a joy. It's more blessed to give than to receive. And so I love the concept of the nonprofit, because especially in those years when you are kind of enjoying that quiet retirement income, or, looking at the sale of your business or whatever it is, this kind of gives you new life. I actually coach my clients to go away. I'm thinking of one doctor and his wife in particular. They were headed to Madrid for a vacation after he retired, and I said, you know what? I'm going to give you homework. And on their vacation, they had to write a manifesto for their nonprofit. And the hope and the dream is that their kids would pick up that dream and be able to then be the directors of the nonprofit in the future and dispense those resources. So it really is a heartwarming and encouraging piece of the legacy, because it's very tangible.
And I would even think too that all the way through the years of, thriving, however you want to think of it as, if someone is charitable minded, they're writing checks to this and that and the other place, local church, wonderful, missionaries, wonderful, maybe some Red Cross type things, that's wonderful. But I would think that it's kind of like when you think about Shark Tank and you're like, what made you come up with this product? Well, I needed this, I couldn't find it, so I created it. Well, isn't there a time where some of your clients may have been going, for 10, 20 years, we've been so charitable, but boy, our heart's desire is, and we just never could find the right nonprofit charity that did it exactly the way we wish, so we just did it ourselves. So it becomes that launching pad for causes you believe in, right?
It absolutely does. I mean, it's amazing, because I think the entrepreneur is cut of a certain cloth, and there's so much creativity that goes into not only creating a business, but then keeping it going. And then if once you're sunsetting, or you're selling the business, or passing it on to a new management, or whatever it is, you got to put those creative juices somewhere. And, to be able to put this into full gear as your retirement project, it's really such a thrill as I watch a lot of my clients do that. And just for them to be able to, again, have that living legacy and start to create things that they may not have been able to in another way.
Yes. And the feel, like you said, is more blessed to give than to receive, and it really kind of becomes that culmination of your career that, I've achieved a lot and I made this money and I did these things, but those things that you can see that you're now giving back to, that also they take a life of their own. That cause, that nonprofit becomes its own legacy, not only that you started it, but it kind of is carried on, whether your family members take it over or maybe you bring in some strategic partners, but that becomes a standalone legacy in and of itself. And it never would have happened unless you had done your hard work to work and make money and had that thought, that intellectual, stimulus of, ooh, I should do this, and here's the thing that I want to do. So I really feel like it's like, becomes that, I dreamt it, I wanted to do it, and now here it is, and now look at where it has gone. And I bet you that one client you mentioned that went on vacation came back, here's our manifesto, and they probably began working as many hours or close to as many hours as before, but now they feel like they're working 10 minutes because it's in their zone of, giving and serving.
It really is. And there's one more aspect that I'd love to just mention. I have the conversation constantly with the entrepreneurs that I work with, who maybe they started in their garage and they grew the business and now they're multimillionaires. And they look me in the eye and they say, Josh, I'm not sure I want to give my kids, $6 million when I'm gone,
Yeah.
Or whatever the number is. And because they're worried that that's just going to spoil their kids, and it's just going to get their kids to think that everything comes free. And that's just not practical. So the nonprofit suddenly plays this dynamic role where you're teaching your children to give and what value and profit that has in the grand scheme of things. And frankly, upon death, a lot of my clients will put, half of their assets into the nonprofit. And now the kids get something, but they're also tasked with, hey, how do we keep giving? How do we keep that legacy going? And it's really a neat thing to watch.
Excellent. Well, this has been such a really neat conversation. Any final thoughts on these two main points that you can think of before we wrap up?
I think the one thought I would have is there are so many opportunities if you know how to do something correctly within the tax code that can really benefit and resonate with those things that are on your heart, those things that you want to get done. It's just a matter of really finding someone who can help you navigate through them, and that's what we do.
Excellent. And as always, what's the best way people can reach out and connect with you, Josh?
Yeah, go onto our website, stratnavinc.com. There's lots of information there, ways to contact us, ways to set up a complimentary analysis and appointment, and we love working with people that have the desire to move from success to significance.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming back on, my friend.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.